You're listening to a new episode of The Brave Technologist, and this one features Liz Zaborowska, who is the serial entrepreneur and current CEO of Spring Catalyst, where she helps teams optimize performance and navigate AI adoption. Liz is also the founder of Bhava Communications, an award-winning marketing, PR, and social media agency that's helped hundreds of enterprise and technology companies stand out as category leaders. In this episode, we discussed why AI resistance is prevalent, the underlying fears and misconceptions that often accompany new technology, principles of responsible AI use and the policies that support it, how AI tools can complement rather than replace human creativity, along with maintaining authenticity in AI-generated content. And now for this week's episode of The Brave Technologist. Liz, welcome to The Brave Technologist. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I've been looking forward to this one. A lot of stuff we can talk about here today. I know that you're working kind of at Spring Catalyst on AI adoption. What are the biggest people and process challenges that you see teams facing when trying to adopt AI?
It's kind of all over the map, but the biggest ones I would say is resistance to trying new things, even as people are trying to do their jobs and their plates are already really full. So a lot of times the managers will say, hey, use these tools, are you using these tools? But there isn't proper training. There isn't a sense of safety around, if I use this tool, is my work going to be valued? So having policies and procedures and a sense of, hey, it's really good if you do use this. And I would say the other problem is that there's silos that people are using these tools in. So one person might be really good at it, the other person's kind of hesitant. And the way to get over that is to create a sharing environment. So all of us on our team at Spring Catalyst and at Bhava Communications, if we discover a really good way to use a tool or a good set of prompts or whatever it happens to be, right? Like we very actively share it with everybody else. And we're trying to teach our clients to do the same kind of thing.
Yeah, it seems like, there's a couple of things here, like the form factor for AI, like in practical use is very kind of like natural, conversational. And it seems like a lot of those things that people have been putting their guard up for, on OPSEC and things like that your IT manager's been trying to train you on, they get disarmed in this process, right? And people kind of lose sight of like, oh, wow, if I put this information in, it's pretty sensitive, but I'm just in the middle of a conversation and it just kind of happened, those types of things. I totally relate with your point. I think it's just a whole new way of working kind of, and then everybody in different like places with it, right?
Mm-hmm. Totally. There is a little bit of the, hey, if I use this tool, is it going to, make me obsolete? Am I going to teach the tool how to do what I'm doing? And making your teams feel like, hey, that's not what we're trying to do here. We're trying to be more efficient, be better at the things that we already do. There absolutely is a time savings and there absolutely is a productivity thing, but it's not like you get that time back, right? So there's a little bit of that resistance, like, oh, now I'm going to be required to do more. But one of the things I talk about a lot is I'm writing this article about how we're in the 1920s of the 21st century. It doesn't matter right now if you're 70 years old or 20 years old, but all of us think that like the 1920s, those are the olden days. And there was horses still on the streets and there was cars and some people had telephones, some people had plumbing, right? But not everybody did. And so life was slower. But, if you take that analogy to now, it's not like, okay, well, don't use the tool, like don't use the plumbing, don't use the phone, don't,
right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
So, everything's accelerating, but we have to embrace these tools because if you don't, you're going to be behind. So we need to overcome these obstacles.
Yeah, absolutely. And would you say there's is that the biggest resistance or fear you see from talking to leaders of teams is around like this idea of, oh, this thing might replace me, or like, are there any other areas you're seeing concern from people on that you talk to?
There's the concern of like, that might replace me. There's the concern of you're requiring me to do more with less time. And especially if somebody hasn't figured out or been taught how to adopt the tools, it actually ends up taking them more time sometimes to do things. Then there's the fear that the quality of the work isn't going to be as high, that it's just going to be AI slop. And that's real. That's it's the whole thing. Like, is this making us smarter? Is it making us dumber?
Yeah.
Something we can affect.
It's a great kind of point to lead into, because it seems like too where, things start to look the same or similar or less authentic. And are we just curating slop? Where's that line, right? Between, this thing's actually making me more productive and more efficient versus like, no, we're just turning into drones, what are your feelings on that? Because you're around people a lot that are using these things. Is there a clear line between like, okay, this is just kind of top down mandated hype at this point versus like real kind of product fit with these things? Or we'd love to get your perspective on that.
I don't think it's just hype. I think people are, these hype cycles are common. So people are at that point where they're saying, this has to be hype. It's not hype, right? I mean, it is making certain kinds of work better. But I think we have a responsibility. There's a new layer of responsibility around emphasizing quality and authenticity and recognizing quality and authenticity, and not saying like, oh yeah, I just did the thing, I'm done, I'm going to like get it off my plate really fast. And whether it's good or not is now your problem, right? Whoever they're giving it to. So I think we have to absolutely be reinforcing with our teams that it's, yes, use these tools. It's also your responsibility as an individual to make sure that the work that you are providing isn't rote, isn't just,
Right.
Something that sounds like ChatGPT. Like, use it as a jumping off point, use it to take things that you've created and improve them or come up with an idea that maybe you hadn't come up with. And if you're not doing that, like honestly, at this point in 2025, like you're kind of missing out, right? Like you really should be doing that. But at the same time, know when to stop. Like if it's going down some kind of rabbit hole that it's starting to really sound bad, just stop. Use your brain.
Right.
Like,
That's a great point. I mean, I think, because whether it's like these hallucinations with things or just fact checking, right? Like, I think that those things, if we are getting stupid or dumber or however we want to frame it, I feel like it's less around like maybe critical thought, not so much, and more around just like good practices of fact checking. Like these things, these prompts will still output a couple different variants on information, from what I see at least. And there's still this like need to like make sure the facts are right, and to make sure your sources are good and all of that. That seems like it'll continue to be in demand. I don't know what you think on that front.
100%. So absolutely fact check. So funny enough, you can use AI to fact check stuff that you've created, right? You're looking for statistics or whatever, but then fact check the fact checking. And and if it's just spitting stuff out, definitely you have to fact check. Like when we use it for helping analyze survey data, for example, right? I mean, 9 times out of 10, there is a hallucination in there somewhere. And so you cannot, I mean, whether you use Perplexity, Gemini, Claude, ChatGPT, any of them. And then the other thing is to compare the tools against each other. And then if you're using confidential data of some sort, make sure you're using paid subscriptions, make sure your team is using paid subscriptions, make sure they understand what can and can't go into the various models, because otherwise you can really get yourself in trouble and or be training these models on stuff that's actually proprietary to you.
Right. No, that's a great point. And I think it's something that people like, it's one of those like OPSEC things that people don't realize. And I think that unfortunately, it seems like, even policy and IT folks at a lot of companies aren't spending enough time looking at the policies that the software has, right? Like where, hey, who's hosting it? Is it us or is it the company? How can that get shared? Because we even like, it's funny, I'll be on calls sometimes and people will pull weird data out about our financials or something that are definitely not public and also inaccurate.
Right.
And it turns out the stuff's been in there. Somebody put it in there at some point and people are taking it as facts. It's kind of gnarly,
Yeah. I mean, I've seen that in Crunchbase when companies have incorrect information in there about them, who knows who put it in there? Could have been an employee, could have been a competitor, could have been whatever.
Totally.
Right. And the AIs are taking this stuff as fact. So yeah, super useful tools, super early, super dangerous if you're not paying attention. And I think it emphasizes the fact that there's a requirement for us as people in business to let the people that have expertise have a front line to making sure that they're reviewing what's going out before it goes out into the world. Because otherwise it's this non-virtuous circle where the wrong stuff is going out and then it's feeding the AIs. And all of this is moving super, super fast. So it's like we can't stick our head in the sand and not use it, but we got to use it with eyes wide open. So,
and I think you have a really good point too about like trying, or whether it's fact checking or even just like for the work itself, using the different tools, right? Because they're vastly different in some cases, and some are much better at some things than others. And it is interesting too that like people made coding this kind of like bulletproof case for AI use. And I personally have spoken with a lot of like VPs of ITs or DevOps people who are like, yeah, our coders are just spotting hallucinations like crazy too. It's just that there's not enough of base layer. You're just going to end up with these same problems no matter what you're doing. It's just kind of super interesting, like seeing how this stuff plays out, practically, right?
Yeah, you need to know what you're looking at. And so if we get rid of all the smart people and all the experts inside of companies and people don't know what they're looking at and they've been growing up just using chatbots, it really it can really devolve pretty quickly. So I think we're at an interesting inflection point, whether you're talking about content or coding or, any kind of aspect of business, right? Like, let's be using these things because otherwise other countries or other companies are going to get ahead of us. At the same time, be really mindful and be really smart about how we're doing.
Yeah, what type of mindset do you think will matter most, or based on what you're seeing? And we've touched on some of that, right? But like, is there an ideal kind of mindset to have in approaching these tools in the workflow from what you're seeing?
Be a lifetime learner. I think that's always been for all of our companies, that's been a really important criterion of how we hire, is people who love to be lifetime learners. I am. I'd rather be honestly learning a new app or playing with something than just sitting around watching television. Not that there's nothing wrong with watching television, but regardless of who you are, make sure that you have a bias towards trying and a bias towards action, and understanding how there's a Cambrian explosion of these tools, right? So like, don't be like, oh, I just use ChatGPT and that's enough, right? I mean, try all the various permutations. Like, we use Beautiful AI a lot for presentation creation. And we've been using it since before they really had a ton of AI features. It's a fantastic tool. I mean, the fact that it has guardrails for design, like I was a designer for a lot of years. So for me, it's just like, it's great because it's a lot faster to get things designed well, but also for the entire team. They can design beautiful things much more quickly that are really impressive to our clients, right? So we have, at our agency, we have a lot of people who are PR professionals who are now designing amazing things. And at the same time, it doesn't preclude us from working with design firms. Like, we work with several different design firms and web design firms. And so it's this accelerator towards good things, if that's the way you are gearing. Then the other thing in terms of mindset would be like a carefulness, right? Like a care around what is being produced, a care around the voice and it being authentic, and not just like not being the purveyor of slop. I think right? Be a good person, create good things, don't put more bad things into the internet, so
yeah.
Right. I think those two things are really important.
I kind of think about it too, like kind of working with high voltage, right? Like where, have some care, like there's a lot of benefits of like and amazing power there, but like, yeah, it can zap you hard if you're reckless, like, I mean, what do you see kind of as the biggest risks right now as AI becomes more embedded in how we communicate and create?
The biggest risks, I think, in terms of how we communicate and how we create are that dumbing down thing, right? That we're not engaging our creative muscle and that social, emotional part of what makes us human in what we put out into the world. And that's, we're mostly talking about business scenarios here, but I think it's true for art too. And making sure that we are thoughtful about how we're using these tools, that we don't just give up and be like, well, like, it's just create it for me. So that's it, right? I think it leads to a kind of one-dimensional or two-dimensional existence. And I think that's kind of a risk. Another risk would be that in business, that AI is creating stuff for AI to consume, for AI to then use to do AI things. And it just becomes this automation loop. And like the humans are sitting on the side just watching it, right? Like we're watching an ant farm. So the dehumanization piece, I think, is an issue in terms of content and creation. On the flip side, though, I mean, there's so many opportunities to ramp up creation and democratize everything from movie making to design to music making. I mean, I'm starting to take DJ classes, and
Nice.
right, and it's like it's accessible, right? Because I could just do it on my computer, and it's super neat, right? So, and there's a lot of positives, but the risks are really real, and so we have to be paying attention to them.
That's one of the reasons why I was really kind of excited to have you on too, because I feel like there's a lot of perception out there, especially if you listen to like people in finance or VC or whatever, when they talk about this stuff, where they're like, oh, it can make a movie, it can do all these great things. But then when you talk to people that actually create, you might expect them, based on how other people are talking about it, to be pretty fearful. Mm-hmm. But it does seem like I did design work for a really long time, right? Like in right in that era when like Photoshop and all of these like, computer generated tools start to become staples. And it was never really a fearful thing. It was more like, look, I've got a great new way to do something amazing with more or less of my time being spent on mundane things. And when you're giving me that example of how your team uses those creative tools, it's just like, it feels so much like that era where, oh, we're going from film to digital. And yeah, there will be cases where stuff gets ripped off and people are, okay, I can't, maybe if my life was making paints, it's going to change now. But like for creative people, the fundamentals are still the fundamentals, right? Like as long as that's not going to go away. Like designers are going to still design, right? Like what's your take on that?
First of all, I agree. And there's also a pendulum swing that happens. Mm-hmm. So everything you said, and you see now young people flocking to record stores because they're back, right? I see Gen Zs buying cameras. They look exactly like the cameras that I had in my 20s and, would take out with when I was going out. The difference now is that the Bluetooth allows them to take the picture and upload it to their phone instantly. And how cool is that, right? So there's there's these interfaces that are allowing us to create content and move it between different, ways that we can interact with the content and also work on the content really easily. That's amazing. The fact that stuff just flies through the sky now and you don't need to like plug it in or whatever. So I think there's going to be, and there already is, a love and a primacy around human content. Like the value of that is increasing. And that's probably a good thing, right? And so there's more access. There's some stuff that's a lot more digital. There's some stuff that's a lot more analog. There's a AI influencer who's awesome. Her name is Catherine. She's Ask ChatGPT. You may have seen her on Instagram, right? But she just recently sold like a bajillion landline phones that are connected by Bluetooth to her phone so that she doesn't have to be, staring at the phone. And so everybody's like, this is amazing. But it's kind of like that camera where it's like, it's the analog piece, but also has the benefits of the digital. So I think we're trying to negotiate that whole dynamic right now as a society.
Yeah, it's cool. It's really cool. Like, I love that records are coming back. I think it's awesome too, by the way.
I'm so mad that like somebody made me throw out my records back in the day. Like I had hundreds of records, but I do have all my CDs still in storage. There you go. I think those are going to come back.
Like, really curious too. You see people throw around how like AI is kind of this era we're in now is kind of like the advent of the internet. Do you see it that way, or how do you kind of, when you're talking to people about it, how do you frame it for them?
So I think it's definitely a lot more dangerous than the advent of the internet, and it has a lot more power and potential than the advent of the internet. Of course, it's intimately connected to it. I think it's like fire. Like when humans found fire, we were suddenly able to stay warm. We were able to cook. We were able to clear land. We were able to see in the dark. I mean, I think AI is like fire for those reasons, but also because just like fire, the responsibility for how it plays out in the world is on individuals, it's on society generally, it's on countries and regions, and right. So with fire, right, like you can't just be like, oh yeah, we're just gonna have an open fire in the middle of a forest and everything will be great, right? There does have to be thought around regulation and thought about personal also responsibility. You can't be walking around with an open candle, down the street or something like that because someone could get hurt. So I think that, and then the transformational aspect of it, right? I
Yeah.
mean, we're in the 1920s of the 21st century, and we used to talk about, oh, wow, everything is exponentially changing like for the last 20 years. It's actually exponentially changing now. It's no longer just an analogy. And where we are in 2 years and 5 years, you and I are going to look at the world and be like, whoa, right? Like the flying cars that we were promised, the Jetsons cars in the 2000s that didn't happen. Oh, they're here now.
Yeah, no, I think it's totally on point. And to that point about it being like fire and all the dangers that can kind of come with that, you spent a lot of time working with the Responsible AI Institute. Are there frameworks or principles that you would kind of wish every org that starts to implement this technology could put in place to kind of help temper that or, put the gloves on or whatever?
So the Responsible AI Institute is amazing. So it was founded by Manoj Saxena, who was the very first GM of IBM Watson. And I've had the great privilege of working with him for over a decade now. I started working with Cognitive Scale, one of his startups, and he's been just doing amazing things. And he's seen firsthand, just from the very first row, hey, this technology has a ton of potential, but if it's not explainable and if it's not harnessed in a responsible way with guardrails, like all hell's going to break loose, right? So we need to band together to make sure that doesn't happen. And so the Institute, or RAY as it's called, they put together various frameworks and recommendations and best practices that enterprises and startups as well can bring into their own organizations to not just wait for regulation to kind of come from the sky, because as you've seen, it comes, it goes, it changes, it shifts, right? So Ray helps companies map to those regulations as they come and go, but also from a sense of internal responsibility, like, hey, if we're going to have this technology inside of our companies, how can we make sure that, based on what, our peers are perhaps doing and what the Institute has suggested, create some guardrails. So basically I would go to Responsible AI Institute online and there's big companies and little companies that are involved there. The other thing that Manoj has done that's super cool is he has a commercial venture called Trustwise. So it's an API-based software solution that creates a variety of shields for things like prompt injections and agentic AI and all kinds of things like that enterprises are looking to deploy. And so whether you're building software from scratch that has AI components in it, you can use Trustwise to help create the guardrails that map to the policies and frameworks and stuff that makes sense. And then also if you're an enterprise and you just want to create those guardrails for your business operations, you can use the software for that. So, and I'm heartened because there's a whole bunch of companies that are starting to pay attention to that kind of thing too. And I think it has to be in software, right? Yeah. Like we need to use AI for good in order to keep up with AI that's not so good.
Right. No, and I think that's a great point too that you make about regulation, where like regulation usually like there in something like AI, where I keep trying to think of other examples where you had the kind of like top down C team, executive team down mandate to like implement something that's still so new to market, where not necessarily new in general, but like, new in front of your face kind of new, right? Like to where, like it's one of those things where it doesn't happen that often, and having kind of these groups that are out there, it's really nice to see that and that they're putting frameworks together, because I feel like people look at regulation like a band-aid that or a savior or whatever, and it never really is. It's just usually whether it's like how the regulation's kind of composed or enforcement, right? Like it's always kind of like a little bit behind. So are these, is the Institute kind of a mix of like academics and practitioners and business people? That's a kind of like, okay, cool. Yeah.
Yeah, it's all about creating bridges, right? Getting people talking about these things and caring about them. I mean, it's a little, to use the fire analogy, right? It's like the Smokey the Bear thing, right? It's one thing to have rules saying like, hey, you're not allowed to have fires out in the woods because it's dry during, this time and this time. So there are rules like that. Like I think right now, in fact, here you're not allowed to to have fires going. Right. But it's also common sense. And it's also it's also having general awareness and everybody being responsible for creating awareness around everyone else around them. So, it's part of why I was super excited to be on this podcast, is like, these are the things that we should not get tired of talking about. We should be talking about these things all the time right now.
Totally.
Informing each other.
Because if you don't, like, then you just basically have these like doomers or people that are
Mm-hmm.
not like, and we should be thinking about that, right? Like I don't mean to downplay, the imagination there or how bad this stuff could go, but I
Right.
feel like there's so many just things that it may be common sense to some people, aren't to others, right? Like where, okay, my job isn't to think about tech every minute of the day or try everything new, but I now have to use this thing, and
Right.
it's one thing I've seen that it sounds like you're seeing it too. It's just like a really cool, I don't know, it's almost like people understanding the issues and kind of coming together through these organizations to try and like, hey, this is new, but here's some ideas, right? Like here's
Mm-hmm.
some ways, that we can work together and put some ideas out there that help. And yeah, it'll be interesting to see how it goes. But
And really practical solutions too, right? So it's
yeah.
like, okay, these are the things that companies in finance should be doing now.
Mm-hmm.
And this is what companies in finance should be doing next year and over the next 5 years. Same thing for healthcare, right? So in these high stakes applications, it definitely heartens me that people are coming together and having those tough conversations and helping each other across competitor lines, even do the right kinds of things with AI so that it's not just about competition for the sake of competition. Because that's the issue that's happening in the political sphere right now. It's like, well, if we put regulations, then other countries are going to get ahead in the AI race, and we don't want to stop innovation. I mean, that's not a bad argument, right? On the face of it. Okay, but if that's happening, then we need to make sure that companies feel like they have a responsibility, and that the individuals inside those companies feel like they have a responsibility to do the right thing, whether it's not putting out AI slop or making sure that agents aren't going rogue, on the other side of it.
So, how can teams kind of balance the speed of innovation with ethical and transparent AI use? Is it a matter of training, or are there other tools that they can implement to help with this?
Absolutely training, absolutely policies inside of the companies. We're at a point now where every organization, whether it's big or small, should have either, larger or smaller policies around this stuff so that employees aren't guessing. Also, so
Mm-hmm.
that managers and the leadership aren't guessing. So, and whether it's an organization like Ray, or there's a ton of resources online now that people can just go to, even if you had like a 10-point list of things that you can and can't do, or should not do, like we're very clear about, hey, our organization has centered on Claude. If you have a paid subscription to Claude, there's certain kinds of data that you can put in, certain kinds of data you can't put into anything, because we have confidentiality obligations to our clients. So some
Mm-hmm.
things need to never go into the AI tools. And hey, you can use ChatGPT and Perplexity even if you don't have a paid account for stuff that's out in the public sphere already. So our teams know what to do. And if we made it very, very safe for people to ask questions. Hey, can I use it for this? Can I use this tool for that? So there's no weird around it. And I
Mm-hmm.
think having that kind of transparent, open communication between team members and managers is absolutely critical for this to be successful.
Awesome. Yeah. And Liz, you've been so gracious with your time, and it's been a fantastic discussion. Really enjoyed it. Is there anything we didn't cover that you want our audience to know about, just kind of as we close this out?
I would say that just play with the stuff, right? I mean, even if it's not germane to your business, like play with Lovable or play with Famous, create an app, create a website, create some graphics, do some things so that you have familiarity and so you're at the forefront of this. And then the other thing I would say for job seekers, do that so that you can put that you have AI experience on your resume. Because, first of all, resumes are being looked at by AI bots now. And
Mm.
there's no secret around that. So, and they're looking to see whether you have AI experience of some sort on there. And second of all, hiring managers and companies are looking for that. It's kind of like back in the day, you'd have Microsoft Word or PowerPoint on your resume that you did, right? Like some of our earlier jobs, right, in the beginning of our careers.
Totally.
But now whether you are an entry level or a senior person, get relevant AI experience for your role that you're trying to go into. So, say you're going to be you want to be a product manager, like there's tools and stuff that PMs are using. Get familiarity with those tools and stick them on your resume.
That's fantastic. That's a great point too. I think it's an awesome one to end on. Like, you got to play with this stuff. Like, we were even doing like bedtime stories for my kids, like where it's just amazing. Like, you use these things for all sorts of stuff, and you find out interesting quirks and new things just in that discovery process too. So I think great advice. Finally, like, where can people follow you and your work online, or if they want to reach out and say hello?
Cool. So we have two companies. So Spring Catalyst. So it's springcatalyst.com. And the other company is Bhava Communications. Bhava Communications. Rhymes with Java, and would love to hear from you.
Fantastic. We'll put both those in the show notes too. Cool. And Liz, again, I really appreciate your time. I really enjoyed getting into these topics with you. And I'd love to have you back to check back in on things too as things progress.
Awesome. Would love to do that. Thank you so much. Really enjoyed those.
Awesome.
Thanks. Bye.
Thanks for listening to the Brave Technologist podcast. To never miss an episode, make sure you hit follow in your podcast app. If you haven't already made the switch to the Brave browser, you can download it for free today at brave.com and start using Brave Search, which enables you to search the web privately. Brave also shields you from the ads, trackers, and other creepy stuff following you across the web.